Imagine you're out hiking, right? Like deep in a national forest.
Okay.
It is a totally clear summer day, the kind where the air is just completely still, you know.
Very.
Exactly. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a supersonic shock wave hits you. And I mean, it hits you so hard it actually knocks the breath right out of your lungs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it literally rattles your teeth in your skull. So you look up, and the entire horizon is just lit by this massive, blinding explosion. And it instantly sparks like a dozen brush fires all around you.
Which is terrifying. I mean, your immediate instinct would be to think a plane went down, right?
Yeah, exactly. You'd expect a commercial airliner or maybe some lost civilian Cessna. So you run toward the impact point thinking you need to pull survivors out of the wreckage. But instead, as you push through the tree line, you suddenly find yourself staring down the barrels of assault rifles.
Right there in the woods.
Right there in the woods. And they are held by this completely silent, heavily armored tactical team. They've got advanced night vision gear, the whole 9 yards, and they are actively protecting a smoldering crash site that officially does not exist.
And we should clarify for the listener, this isn't a movie script?
No, this actually happened in 1986.
Which is an incredibly significant year for this investigation, because that incident is really the exact friction point where the public world, academia and civilian life directly collides with the hidden world of the black budget.
Right. Because the technology they were hiding in those woods, it wasn't just like a cool new type of airplane. According to the source material we're looking at today, it was potentially the death of conventional physics as we know it.
We all operate under this baseline assumption that the fundamental forces of the universe are, well, fully mapped out by now. What they teach you in high school.
United model, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But when you look really closely at the historical record, specifically the mid-20th-century race for advanced propulsion, you start seeing these glaring anomalies.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to another deep dive, everyone. We are taking you into a space where the laws of physics you rely on every single day might actually just be a fraction of the real story.
It is a massive topic.
It is. We are unpacking this incredibly dense, comprehensive, technical, and historical analysis today. It is all based on investigative journalist Nick Cook's book, The Hunt for Zero Point, Inside the Classified World of Anti-Gravity Technology.
Plus a massive stack of declassified flowcharts, technical documents, and some really complex propulsion equations that came along with it.
Right. And before we get into the crazy stuff, we really need to establish the pedigree of the investigator here.
Yeah.
Because Nick Cook is not, he's not some guy hunting for UFOs on internet message boards, right?
No, not at all. During the entire period of this investigation, Cook was the aviation editor for Jane's Defense Weekly.
Which is huge.
It is the undisputed global authority on military technology. I mean, aerospace intelligence, defense procurement, Jane's is the gold standard.
Right. So when their aviation editor starts pulling the thread on anti-gravity, he's doing it with a contact list that has, top-tier defense contractors, active military insiders, and elite aerospace engineers.
He had unparalleled access.
So our mission for this deep dive is to basically explore this absolute boom in anti-gravity research that happened in the 1950s. And we want to figure out how it seemingly vanished without a single trace.
We're going to test Cook's central thesis here, and it is a massive paradigm shift because he argues that this technology didn't just hit some developmental dead end.
Right.
He suggests it was deliberately pushed into a highly classified black world, and the reason for that was to protect global energy structures and essentially maintain unchecked military dominance.
It is wild. But we are going to impartially examine the evidence, the technical claims, and these historical blueprints of secrecy exactly as they're presented in the source material. So where do we start?
Well, to understand how a scientific secret of that massive magnitude is kept for decades, we actually shouldn't start in a pristine laboratory. We need to look at the enforcement mechanisms first.
Let's back to the crash site.
Exactly. We need to go back to that crash site in the forest, July 11th, 1986, Saturday peak.
Saturday peak, yeah. This is near Bakersfield, California, right on the edge of the Sequoia National Forest. Who was actually out there to witness this whole thing go down?
According to the sources, it was a civilian law student named Amelia Lopez, and she was out there with a few of her friends.
Just camping, right?
Yeah, they were camping in a remote area, but it was fully accessible, public land. And after experiencing that massive shock wave and the explosion, their immediate instinct, naturally, was to hike toward the impact point to see if anyone needed emergency medical assistance.
Which makes sense. But they didn't run into local firefighters or, county sheriffs.
No, they hit an absolute wall of federal muscle.
A tactical team.
Right, a highly specialized Pentagon Tactical Red Team. And the sources detailed how these soldiers used overwhelming physical force and made explicit threats invoking national security to immediately lock down the area.
They literally ran the civilians right out of the woods.
They did. And the timeline of this specific response is what makes it so critical to Cook's entire investigation. This extreme containment at Saturday Peak happened in the summer of 1986.
Okay, 1986. And why is that specific year so important?
Because the aircraft that most people associate with this specific era of secret development, the F-117A stealth fighter, that jet was not publicly unveiled until November of 1988.
Oh, wow. Wait, so you're Maisie before the public even knew that stealth technology was a functional, real thing? The military already had these dedicated rapid response tactical units ready to deploy into civilian territory.
Exactly, just to quarantine a crash site before anyone could see it.
That is insane. It's honestly like, think about playing a video game, right? It's like stumbling into a restricted area in a game before you've unlocked the security clearance.
That is a great way to think about it.
Right. And the game just forcibly responds you out of bounds. Like, nope, you're not supposed to be here yet.
That is exactly how the military intelligence complex treated those civilian hikers. They treated them like a virus. The system deployed this autonomic, overwhelming force designed to immediately isolate and neutralize a foreign body, all to protect the host organism, which is the Black Budget Program.
And the structural blueprint of that immune system, it's vast.
Oh, it is massive. The sources detail a huge institutional expansion surrounding these classified domains during that era. We see the establishment of things like the Air Force Space Command. And the Navy was actively training these highly specialized subspecialists known as the Naval Space Cadre.
Wait, really? The Naval Space Cadre, what did they do?
Their mandate was specifically to monitor orbiters and space debris. And the sheer bureaucracy required to maintain this level of secrecy is just staggering. I mean, it requires compartmentalized funding, dedicated personnel, and a legal framework that entirely supersedes normal civilian jurisdiction.
Okay, so that raises a massive question for me. If they already possessed an institutional apparatus capable of completely masking a crashed stealth jet in a public forest in 1986, what else does that level of organized secrecy allow them to hide?
That is the exact question Nick Cook asked.
I mean, if you can make a physical burning crash site disappear from the public record, can you make an entire branch of theoretical physics disappear?
Yes, and Cook realized that just monitoring modern crash sites would only ever show him the symptoms of the secrecy. If he wanted to find the actual root cause, he had to look backward.
Go back in time.
Right. He needed to find out when this specific black world apparatus was first constructed and what original core technology it was actually built to protect.
And that search pulls him out of the California desert and directly into this red brick bunker in Greater London.
Yes, he's digging through the archives at the Jane's Defense Weekly offices in Colston.
Right. And what does he find there?
He uncovers this photocopied article from a 1956 Popular Science magazine. It was written by a guy named Michael Gladich. And the title of this article is just incredibly bold. It's called "The G Engines Are Coming."
See, you hear a title like that from the 1950s, and your brain immediately defaults to, like, retrofuturism.
Sure.
You picture the Jetsons, flying cars, people living in domed cities on Mars.
Yeah.
But the actual contents of the article are hyper-specific, right?
Very specific. Gladich describes aircraft hovering over dry lake beds without any visible means of propulsion.
No jet exhaust at all.
No jet exhaust, no massive propellers, no control surfaces like wings or flaps. Just hovering.
But it was published in a popular science magazine. How do we know it wasn't just pulp sci-fi?
Because of the sourcing. The sourcing elevates the article far beyond just fiction. Gladich was directly quoting executives from the absolute titans of the defense industry.
The big guys.
The biggest, the Glenn L. Martin Aircraft Company, Bell Aircraft, Lear. These corporations were investing massive amounts of capital into what they were openly referring to as the G Project.
Okay, so we were talking about people like Lawrence Bell, the actual founder of Bell Aircraft.
Yes.
And George S. Trimble, who was the head of advanced programs at Martin Aircraft. I mean, these are the men who were literally building the backbone of American aerospace dominance.
They were the establishment.
And they're on the record in 1956 stating that gravity control would be achieved on a developmental timeline matching the atomic bomb.
Yes. They fundamentally believed they were only a few years away from a working, functional prototype.
Which is mind-blowing. especially considering George S. Trumbull explicitly predicted that the conquest of gravity would allow an aircraft to accelerate instantly to the speed of light.
Instantly.
Which, okay, under conventional physics, that is a death sentence.
Absolutely.
If you accelerate instantly, the inertia alone just turns the human body into a smear on the back of the pilot's seat. You'd be crushed.
Under Newtonian physics, yes. But Gladich's article details the theoretical workaround they were pursuing. The idea is that if you master gravity control, you are no longer relying on Newtonian action and reaction to push a vehicle through space.
We're not throwing mass out the back to push forward.
Exactly. A G-ship doesn't push. It manipulates the local gravitational field itself. And this gravitational control would act uniformly on every single atom of the vehicle and every single atom of the passengers inside it simultaneously.
Okay, wait. So meaning the passengers would feel zero inertial force?
Zero. Gladich even notes in the article that you wouldn't even need seatbelts.
No seatbelts?
None. Even if the craft was executing right-angle turns at Mach 10 or coming to a dead stop from hypersonic speeds.
That is just the sheer, unadulterated hubris of these executives speaking so openly about conquering gravity.
Yeah.
I mean, it forced Cook to completely reevaluate his entire stance, didn't it?
It did. Cook actually admits he previously thought anti-gravity was a complete joke, just fringe nonsense. But for these very pragmatic, very serious aerospace executives to speak literally about real, classified programs, Cook had to confront the possibility that our foundational understanding of physics contains a massive blind spot.
So he went back to the absolute basics.
He went back to gravitation itself.
And the source material actually pulls up the fundamental gravity equation here. Most people who follow physics, or even just remember high school, know that Isaac Newton mathematically mapped out gravity.
Right, he gave us the formula.
He gave us the formula to calculate the exact gravitational force between two objects. It's why we can, precisely calculate orbital mechanics and send a probe to slingshot perfectly around Jupiter.
It works. We use the math because it works. But the math contains an anomaly.
What's the anomaly?
The equation hinges entirely on one leading variable. The gravitational constant, we call it big G. The force of gravity F depends on the masses of the two objects and the distance between them squared. But all of that is multiplied by this constant, big G.
Okay. But Newton was a genius, right? He calculated gravity's exact effect.
He calculated the effect perfectly. But Newton openly admitted he had absolutely no idea what the cause was.
He didn't know how it worked.
He didn't know the physical mechanism of the pull. He just knew the math worked.
Wow.
And that theoretical gap still persists today. The precise measurement of big G remains notoriously elusive in modern experimental physics. We know what the gravitational field does, but the fundamental mechanism of how it actually exerts attraction, that is not fully integrated into our standard model of particle physics yet.
Okay, so put yourself in the mindset of an aerospace engineer in, 1955.
Right.
You are coming off the victory of World War II. You've split the atom.
Yeah.
You're breaking the sound barrier left and right. And then you look at that theoretical gap regarding big G.
It's an opportunity.
Exactly. If the physics community can't even lock down the exact measurement or the mechanism of this force, why couldn't you theoretically build a machine to just neutralize it?
That's the thought process. If gravity is just a field, why can't you block it? Or reverse its polarity exactly like you can with an electromagnetic field?
And that ambiguity is what made the 1950s an incredibly fertile landscape for experimentation. They fundamentally believed they were on the verge of hacking the gravitational constant.
They really did.
But I still struggle with the sudden silence. I really do. If titans of industry were holding press conferences predicting instant acceleration, and then a year later the entire industry drops the subject, how does that happen?
It's a huge pivot.
It's as if the CEOs of Ford and Toyota suddenly held a huge press conference tomorrow saying they've perfected teleportation, it'll be in your cars next year. And then suddenly every single CEO deletes their social media and refuses to ever mention teleportation again.
It requires a catalyst, right?
It absolutely requires a catalyst.
Yeah.
And Cook searched for that catalyst. He realized the executives wouldn't make those bold claims without seeing some sort of physical proof of concept first.
They needed to see it work.
Yes. So he needed to find the experimental physicist whose actual lab work sparked the entire G project movement to begin with. And the sources described this physicist as moving through the historical record, like a ghost in a lab coat, which is such a cool phrase. His name was Thomas Townsend Brown.
Brown is the absolute nexus point for Western gravity control research.
Okay.
He was an American physicist who discovered a highly anomalous physical reaction while he was experimenting with high-voltage capacitor systems.
Let's visualize the lab setup here for the listener.
Right.
Brown is working with what's called an asymmetric capacitor.
Right.
It's basically two differently sized conductive metal plates, and they're separated by a dielectric insulator. So he pumps a massive, lethal amount of high-voltage direct current into this setup.
Thousands of volts.
Right. And the capacitor physically moves, it jerks, it generates a subtle but consistently measurable propulsive force, and it's always thrusting toward the larger positive plate.
This specific physical movement was documented as the B-filled-Brown effect.
The B-filled-Brown effect, okay.
Now, the orthodox scientific community at the time observed his demonstrations, and they offered a very conventional explanation. They argued that putting high voltage through a device in an atmosphere simply ionizes the air molecules around the plates.
Okay, so it charges the air.
Right, and those charged particles move, and that creates a tiny localized breeze that physically pushes the capacitor. They classified it as a simple electrostatic thrust, just ion wind.
But Brown completely rejected that explanation, didn't he?
Absolutely. He believed the asymmetric charge was doing something much, much more profound than just pushing air around. He argued it was creating a direct coupling with the gravitational field itself.
Wow.
And he actually coined the term electrogravitics to describe this entirely new branch of physics.
Electrogravitics.
Yes.
Yeah.
And by the mid-1950s, Brown was so confident in his data that he proposed Project Winterhaven.
Project Winterhaven. What was the goal there?
He formally pitched the United States military on a dedicated research program to develop full-scale manned electrogravitic flying discs.
Flying saucer.
Essentially, yes. And Project Winterhaven really forced the hand of the Black World apparatus.
Because he was making too much noise.
Because Brown's physical demonstrations were undeniable enough to attract the immediate attention of the military intelligence complex, but rather than offering him open funding and, public accolades, the military initiated a deliberate, highly coordinated campaign of containment.
They shut him down.
They did. The Air Force Office of Special Investigations, AFOSI, stepped in. They thoroughly reviewed Brown's work, and then they issued these highly publicized official dismissals.
Oh, I see.
They leaned entirely into that ion wind explanation. They loudly told the press and the academic community that Brown was simply confused by ionized air molecules.
Which is just brutal. But the tactical brilliance of that AFOSI smear campaign lies in its use of a plausible conventional physics explanation to thoroughly marginalize him.
It's very effective.
Right, because by convincing the mainstream academic community that this inventor is just misinterpreting basic electrostatic propulsion, you instantly sever his credibility.
Right.
And you cut off his access to civilian funding.
You isolate him completely.
But claiming an anti-gravity device is just moving because of ion wind, it's like claiming a massive naval battleship is only moving forward because the captain is standing on the bow blowing on the sails.
That's a great analogy.
I mean, sure, it technically produces a tiny force, but it mathematically cannot account for the sheer physical movement at play, especially considering the source notes that Brown was testing these devices in heavy oil and hard vacuums.
Right, where there simply wasn't enough air to ionize anyway.
Exactly. So the ion wind theory falls apart if you look closely.
It does. But it worked for the public. And while Brown was publicly relegated to the fringe, Cook uncovers evidence that within the highly classified shadow world, electrogravitic concepts actually became foundational architecture.
And the source material draws a very direct line from Brown's disgraced patents to modern, multi-billion-dollar stealth technology, specifically the B-2 Spirit bomber.
The B-2, yes.
Because researchers analyzing the B-2's design note that it allegedly utilizes a highly advanced electrostatic charge on its wing's leading edge.
Now, officially, the military might explain that away as just a method to absorb or disperse incoming radar waves.
Right, stealth tech.
Right. But the implication Cook draws is much heavier. He suggests the stealth program itself might actually be a dual-purpose cover for electrogravitic propulsion.
Which means the smear campaign wasn't designed to stop electrogravitic research at all.
No, it was designed to monopolize it.
Wow.
While Thomas Townsend Brown was being discredited in the public square, the major aerospace corporations were quietly absorbing his research data behind closed doors.
And that absorption is what triggered the corporate blackout.
Exactly. Following the AFOSI intervention, Cook maps out how the entire paper trail of the mid-1950s gravity boom just abruptly evaporates.
It just disappears.
Completely. He finds internal memos proving that virtually every major American aerospace firm was heavily invested in this. But the critical technical reports simply no longer exist in any public archive anywhere.
And we are talking about massive foundational documents here. The American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, the AIAA, they produced a dedicated stealth report on electrogravitics.
It is missing.
Missing. The Office of Naval Research conducted a massive evaluation of the tech.
Also missing.
Gone. The Naval Research Lab's official technical appraisal.
Completely gone. It is a comprehensively sanitized historical record.
And Cook highlights the whiplash of this transition by contrasting it with the public media record, right?
Yes. On Sunday, November 20, 1955, the New York Herald Tribune ran a massive, detailed report highlighting the military's active interest in electrogravitics.
In 1955, it was mainstream news.
Yes. But by the early 1960s, there was a total, absolute public cessation.
Nothing.
Not a press release, not a journal article, not a single whisper.
But the blackout wasn't just limited to paper. It had very real, fatal human consequences.
It did. The source details the story of Henry Hudson Bonson.
Right, Banson. Who was he?
Banson was a wealthy industrialist, and he became totally obsessed with the potential of electrogravitics. So he used his own capital to establish an independent, fully equipped anti-gravity laboratory.
So he's funding it himself.
Exactly. He wanted to pursue the science entirely outside of military oversight.
Which is dangerous.
Incredibly dangerous, because Banson's independent initiative represented a severe security risk to the containment protocol. He was operating outside the military-industrial complex.
And then Banson dies suddenly in a private plane crash.
Just out of nowhere.
Right. And in the immediate aftermath of his death, his entire independent laboratory's files simply evaporate.
They vanish.
The scientists who worked for him disperse into the wind, and his entire body of research vanishes from the public domain. It literally reads like a Cold War espionage thriller.
It really does. And it demonstrates the coordinated, ruthless transition of this research from civilian hands into the highly classified military domain.
And Cook actually experiences the impenetrable nature of this wall firsthand during his investigation, doesn't he?
He does. He decides to track down the aerospace executives who were so vocal back in 1956. He locates George S. Trimble.
Trimble, the guy who predicted instantaneous acceleration to light speed.
The very same. Trimble is still alive, and Cook manages to get him on the phone. But Trimble, who used to aggressively court the press about the G project, he becomes incredibly evasive.
Doesn't want to talk.
He absolutely refuses to discuss any of his past statements.
And it gets worse, right? Because shortly after that interaction with Trimble, Cook receives a cryptic warning.
Yes. From a trusted public relations contact within the aerospace industry, the warning is completely unambiguous. He's told to back off. He is directly told that he is looking into something that is heavily protected.
So, I mean, think about this. If the military publicly says a technology is a joke, it's just ion wind, it's nonsense. But then they classify all the documents, absorb the research, and actively threaten journalists who ask about it. What does that tell us?
It tells us this wasn't a technological dead end. When a scientific pursuit genuinely fails, scientists publish extensive postmortems explaining exactly why it failed. That's how science works. The sudden, absolute withdrawal of public data, the missing files, the terrified executives, this is the exact anatomical signature of a successful weaponization program going black.
Wow. So Cook realizes he's hit a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
He can't just keep asking aerospace executives about anti-gravity. The containment protocol is way too strong.
It's too well defended. He needs a new tactic. He realizes that to understand the technology, he needs to study the cage it's kept in.
The cage?
Right. And the cage is the black world of stealth technology.
So he pivots.
He utilizes his position at Jane's Defense Weekly. He initiates a formal, highly credible journalistic investigation into the history of stealth technology. He specifically focuses on the Lockheed Have Blue prototype and the F-117A program.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
Because that allows him to maintain legitimate access to defense contractors and military officials without tripping the security alarms associated with gravity research.
Exactly. He's just a journalist asking about stealth jets.
Right. And through this stealth investigation, he makes contact with a very interesting figure identified in the sources as Dr. Dan Marcus.
Yes, Dr. Marcus. He is a reclusive scientific consultant deeply embedded in the classified world. And Marcus slowly begins dropping hints to Cook steering him toward a massive realization
Which is?
that the extreme compartmentation, the fragmented, need-to-know security structure that supposedly hid the stealth jet wasn't originally built for stealth at all.
Wait, really?
The F-117A was merely a beneficiary of a security apparatus constructed decades earlier. The Black World was engineered to protect a much more radical paradigm: the manipulation of the local space-time metric.
Space-time manipulation.
Yes, and through Marcus, Cook discovers that the physics had actually evolved significantly beyond Thomas Townsend Brown's electrostatic anomalies. The classified sector had moved entirely into the realm of zero-point energy.
Okay, zero-point energy, or ZPE. I mean, it sounds like something a comic book villain uses to power a doomsday laser.
It does sound like sci-fi.
It does, but the source material grounds it entirely in hard quantum mechanics.
We are moving from mid-century electrostatics into highly advanced quantum field theory here. The core concept of ZPE is that the vacuum of space is not an empty void.
It's not just nothingness.
Exactly. Whether you're looking at the vast expanse between galaxies or just the microscopic space between the atoms in a coffee cup, that vacuum is teeming with a massive baseline energy generated by quantum fluctuations. Subatomic particles are constantly popping into and out of existence.
And the source text actually provides the mathematical model for the energy density of this zero-point field.
It does.
It's an integral equation for the vacuum energy density. Let's look at how this math translates into physical reality, because the way I'm reading this equation is basically the theoretical blueprint for infinite power.
It is. So when physicists calculate the sum total of these infinite microscopic quantum fluctuations, they use this integral. It takes the reduced Planck constant, the frequency of these quantum fluctuations vibrating at the speed of light, and integrates it.
And the result?
The mathematics suggests that the baseline energy contained within the vacuum is practically infinite.
Infinite energy. The analogy I've heard, and I think it's used often, is that a single coffee cup's worth of empty space contains enough zero-point energy to boil all the oceans on Earth.
Yes, that is the scale of power we are discussing.
Which is terrifying and amazing. But Cook's contacts inside the Black World draw a very profound distinction here, don't they?
They do. There are two parallel goals in this research. The first is gravity control. Gravity control is fundamentally about momentum transfer.
Moving things.
Right. It's the manipulation of inertia to move a vehicle from point A to point B without the occupants feeling any g-forces.
Okay, so that's the propulsion side.
Right. But the second goal, zero-point energy, is about energy generation. It's about tapping into that infinite quantum vacuum to power the vehicle indefinitely.
So if an experimental craft could tap into that infinite quantum vacuum, it could essentially power its own localized gravitational field.
Exactly.
It could manipulate the space-time metric around itself, neutralizing inertia entirely, forever. And Cook is told that this physics was suppressed not just because it creates an unstoppable military vehicle.
No, it goes much deeper.
Right. Because an infinite energy source would threaten the foundational infrastructures of the global economy.
It would upend everything. And this realization brings Cook to one of the most controversial intersections in the entire source material, the strategic utility of the UFO phenomenon.
Okay, yeah, let's get into this. Because Cook investigates the idea that famous UFO incidents, specifically the 1947 Roswell crash, that they might not have been extraterrestrial visitors at all.
The sources posit a very different theory.
They suggest that these were early, highly experimental military aircraft utilizing gravity manipulation.
Right. Because think about it structurally. If the military is testing vehicles that utilize zero-point energy to manipulate gravity, they face a massive security problem. They cannot hide the physical flight tests entirely.
Because they have to fly them in the sky.
Exactly. Civilians and commercial pilots are eventually going to see craft in the sky moving at impossible speeds and executing right-angle turns without sonic booms.
Hold on, though. I have to push back hard on this. Are the sources genuinely suggesting that the Roswell crash, the absolute holy grail of UFO lore, was a deliberate psychological operation?
That is the implication, yes.
But how do you coordinate a lie that massive across thousands of military personnel, local police, the media, without devastating leaks? It seems impossible.
Well, you don't need everyone to be in on the lie. You only need them to believe the misdirection. The sources imply that the government, desperate to hide zero-point propulsion, recognized the extraterrestrial narrative as an incredibly convenient, self-sustaining cover story.
Oh, I see. It's the ultimate magician's misdirection.
Precisely.
They let the public look at the shiny, terrifying alien distraction in the left hand. They allow the media to just run completely wild with stories about little green men and flying saucers.
And by doing so, they attach a massive cultural stigma to the entire phenomenon.
Oh, that is so devious. Because consequently, no credible academic, no serious physicist, and no mainstream journalist will ever look at the revolutionary physics being developed in the right hand.
Exactly. If a pilot reports seeing a craft hovering silently and the government subtly implies it might be a UFO, traditional scientists walk away immediately. They want to protect their academic reputations. They won't touch it.
It is a brutally effective social engineering tactic.
It protects the technological asset by totally poisoning the well of public discourse.
But as Cook processes this timeline, he confronts a really big geographical anomaly.
Yes, the timeline and the location don't perfectly align.
Right, because if American defense contractors were perfecting electrogravitics and the zero-point physics in the mid-1950s, where did the foundational data originate?
That is the key question.
A scientific leap of that magnitude rarely occurs in a vacuum without a preceding era of intense, brute force experimentation.
And this is where the historical reality becomes incredibly dark. Because Cook realizes the trail doesn't start in the United States at all.
Where does it start?
It starts in the ashes of the Third Reich. He travels to Europe to trace the physical origin of the Black World,
And he ends up in Germany.
specifically the Harz Mountains. He visits the remnants of the Mittelwerk complex.
Middlework, what was that?
This was the highly secure subterranean manufacturing facility for the V-1 and V-2 rockets during World War II.
Oh, wow. And the source material actually describes Middlework as a chthonic necropolis, an underworld city of the dead, which is incredibly grim.
It is, and we really have to slow down here and acknowledge the sheer, staggering human cost of this facility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Cook walks through Gallery 46, deep underground in this damp, freezing rock. These advanced aerospace rockets, the actual precursors to the Apollo program, were physically built by over 20,000 slave laborers.
20,000.
And the conditions were deliberately engineered for extermination through labor. These prisoners died from deliberate starvation, rampant disease, and brutal executions carried out by the SS. The advanced technology that we're talking about was born directly from unimaginable human suffering.
It's horrifying. And within this subterranean nightmare, Cook identifies the primary architect of the secret weapons program, right?
Yes, SS General Hans Kammler.
Hans Kammler.
Kammler was a figure of legendary brutality, but his true power, in the context of this investigation, lay in his organizational structure.
How so?
Kammler didn't answer to the traditional military hierarchy. He bypassed the generals of the Wehrmacht and the Luftwaffe entirely. He reported directly to Martin Bormann, who was Adolf Hitler's deputy.
So he had a direct line to the absolute top.
Yes. And that reporting structure is the key to everything. Kammler operated a completely autonomous, heavily compartmentalized empire of science. He had unlimited funding through slave labor, absolute operational security enforced by the SS, and zero civilian or military oversight.
And the source notes something really strange about the end of the war, right? When Allied forces finally entered the Nordhausen complex, they seemed strangely indifferent to the war crimes.
Yes, their primary objective wasn't liberating prisoners or pursuing justice at all. Their main goal was securing the technology and the scientists before the Soviets could get their hands on them.
And Cook uncovers evidence suggesting that Kammler, who was obviously acutely aware of the impending collapse of the Reich, he actually utilized his monopoly on advanced technology as leverage.
He did. The historical theory presented in the sources posits that Kammler struck a deal with American intelligence. He traded Germany's most sensitive, highly classified scientific developments and his elite personnel in exchange for his own escape and immunity.
I mean, think about the moral weight of what is happening here. The United States military didn't just inherit the V-2 rockets or the swept-wing jet designs from Germany.
No, they inherited the organizational model Kammler created.
Extreme, fanatical compartmentation, absolute zero civilian oversight, unquestioned authority, and total security operating completely above the law. The military-industrial complex absorbed the SS methodology for keeping secrets.
And that methodology became the structural DNA of the modern American black budget program.
It is a haunting legacy. It really is. And Kammler's alleged escape was predicated on possessing something so valuable, so fundamentally paradigm-shifting, that the Allies would deliberately overlook his massive atrocities to get it.
They wanted the prize.
Right. And to identify that specific bargaining chip, Cook traces the final, chaotic days of the war to a highly secure industrial facility in Czechoslovakia.
May 6, 1945, the Skoda works in Pilsen.
So what's happening in Pilsen?
The Soviet Red Army is advancing rapidly from the east, so SS General Jakob Sporenberg is frantically overseeing the evacuation of the facility's most elite, isolated scientific team.
And among this team are lead scientists Victor Schilling and Ernest Koenig.
Right. And these men had been heavily shielded from the broader war, working in total, absolute isolation.
They understood the grim geopolitical reality, though, right? Both the advancing Americans and the Soviets would gladly execute them to possess what they had built.
Yes, their lives depended on the tech, and what they built had a higher war priority rating than the German atomic bomb program.
Wait, higher than the nuke?
The nuclear bomb was secondary to this.
That is wild. And during the evacuation, Schilling observes the core asset. It's resting on a flatbed truck, hidden under a heavy canvas tarp.
It is described in the records as a large, highly secure, metallic bell-shaped device, and according to the captured records, it had been kept deep in a rock tunnel carved by slave labor, and it was only ever activated under the cover of absolute darkness.
And Cook manages to uncover highly classified documents regarding this specific device, right? He gets them through a Polish military journalist named Igor Witkowski.
Yes, Witkowski's documents are central here.
The Third Reich's most classified project was simply known as Die Glock.
The bell.
The bell. And the documents describe the bell as a heavy metallic apparatus containing two massive counter-rotating cylinders.
Yes, and these cylinders were filled with a highly radioactive, heavy liquid substance. It was given the code name Zerum 525.
Zerum 525. Okay. The source material actually provides a detailed technical flowchart of how the bell operated. Let's walk through the mechanics of this, because this isn't like occult magic. It's a brutal, brute force applied physics process.
It's very mechanical. So the process begins with massive electrical excitation. The device is pumped with high voltage power,
Right.
and this energy is used to spin the two internal cylinders in opposite directions at incredibly high sustained speeds.
So you have a massive device violently spinning a heavy radioactive liquid in counter-rotating directions. And the flowchart states, this creates a vortex compression field.
Exactly. The counter-rotation of this specifically electrified radioactive fluid generates massive, conflicting, and separating magnetic fields.
And that leads to the final stage.
Right. The final critical stage of the process, torsion, or metric alteration. The documents explicitly define this stage as inertia and gravity shear.
Inertia and gravity shear. Let's try to visualize the physics of space folding here for everyone listening.
We do.
So imagine the fabric of space-time isn't just empty, right? Imagine it's a heavy, tightly woven blanket.
Okay.
Conventional propulsion like a jet engine or a rocket is like trying to drag a heavy object across the top of that blanket. It requires massive amounts of energy, and you feel all the friction and the inertia pushing against you.
Right, action and reaction.
Exactly. But the bell isn't trying to push across the blanket at all. By maximizing that torsion field, it's actually grabbing the fabric of the blanket right where it sits, and it's twisting it into a knot.
Torsion knot.
Right. A knot so incredibly tight that the normal rules of gravity and inertia simply slip right off the edges of the knot. The craft, or the device itself, becomes functionally isolated from the universe's gravitational field.
You are fundamentally changing the geometry of space around the vehicle rather than moving the vehicle through space.
Which is mind-bending.
Yeah.
But the historical record regarding the scientists involved really supports the extreme power of this device.
It does. Much of the theoretical development for the bell was overseen by Walter Gerlach.
Who was Gerlach?
He was a leading German physicist, and his actual specialty was spin polarization and gravitation.
But what is truly terrifying is Gerlach's reaction to his own creation.
Yes.
Because Gerlach survives the war, right? But he maintains an absolute unbroken silence on the subjects of gravitation and spin polarization for the rest of his entire life. The source documents suggest he was frightened beyond reason by the physical results of the bell's testing.
And his terror was entirely justified by the catastrophic physical effects of the device.
What happened when they turned it on?
Well, according to Witkowski's translated documents, when the bell was activated, it generated uncontrollable electromagnetic and radiation fields. And these fields caused severe, immediate biological anomalies in the vicinity.
Like what?
We're talking about the rapid decay and literal crystallization of organic matter.
Crystallization.
Yes. Plants, insects, and presumably the slave laborers who were forced to clean the subterranean test chamber, their cellular structure was instantly destroyed and crystallized by the torsion field.
That is horrific. So it was meant to be an experimental gravity engine, But simply by turning it on, it acted as a weapon of mass biological destruction.
Exactly. So we have the heavy device under a tarp, the elite scientists, and the raw experimental data. On May 6, 1945, they are evacuated from Pilsen by Kammler's forces.
Right, so where did that technological plunder end up?
This brings us to the operational handoff. The source traces exactly how all of the scientific data was gathered up by American intelligence programs, specifically Operation Lusty and the Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee.
Operation Lusty.
Yes. This is the critical transition point. The advanced physics developed under Kammler's brutal authority was directly absorbed into the United States defense establishment.
And Cook maps the modern geography of this black project world, doesn't he?
He does. He traces the flow of technology from Kammler's escaping convoys directly to the most secure, highly classified installations in the U.S.
Lockheed's Skunk Works and Area 51.
Exactly, out in the Nevada desert.
And they didn't just lock it in a vault and forget about it. They iterated upon it for decades. Cook points to the rumored Aurora spy plane, right? Codenamed SR-91.
Right. The source material suggests that the Aurora's highly classified exotic propulsion system is the direct, evolved descendant of the German Bell project.
It allegedly utilizes the exact same rotational field torsion physics to achieve hypersonic speeds without ripping the pilot apart through inertial force.
It is the ultimate evolution of the G engine.
Synthesizing the entirety of Cook's investigation, the source text really presents three massive analytical conclusions about the technological reality we currently occupy.
Let's break those down.
Yeah. The first conclusion is the bifurcation of modern physics.
Right. Because of the systematic classification of Thomas Townsend Brown's electrogravitics in the 1950s, the field of physics permanently split into two entirely separate tracks.
Two parallel worlds.
Exactly. The physics taught in academic institutions, the physics you learn at university, is intentionally stunted. It remains bound to conventional Newtonian propulsion and fossil fuel energy models.
Meanwhile, the classified defense sector is operating on a parallel track of applied physics. Space-time manipulation, zero-point energy. They are literally 70 years ahead of the public sector.
And then the second conclusion is the legacy of SS Special Projects.
Which is just chilling.
It is. The American Black Budget Program didn't just inherit advanced aerospace technology, it inherited Hans Kammler's organizational soul.
Right. It utilizes extreme compartmentation, a total lack of democratic oversight, and an apparatus of absolute security that operates entirely above the law.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most impactful conclusion for everyone listening today.
Strategic energy and material containment.
Yes.
Because you have to ask, why hide all of this? If zero-point energy could provide limitless clean power to the entire planet, why keep it locked in the desert?
The answer is entirely economic and geopolitical. Because infinite zero-point energy would instantly and irrevocably collapse the geopolitical structures that currently run the world.
It would change everything overnight.
Absolutely. If every home, every car, and every city can pull infinite power directly from the quantum vacuum, the global autonomy reliant on fossil fuels, massive oil pipelines, and centralized power grids becomes obsolete overnight.
So the suppression of this physics isn't just about keeping a superior weapon out of the hands of foreign adversaries. It's about protecting a multi-trillion-dollar energy status quo.
It is about maintaining control.
And this is exactly why this history matters to you right now. Every time you pay a surging electricity bill, or every time you buy a plane ticket or fill up your car with gas, you are actively participating in an energy paradigm that, according to Cook's extensive network of sources, might have been rendered completely obsolete back in the 1950s.
You are paying for engineered scarcity in a universe of theoretical abundance.
Man. To summarize the ultimate takeaway from Cook's deep dive into the shadow world, the most powerful, effective weapon developed during the 20th century wasn't an explosive device.
It wasn't the atomic bomb.
It wasn't the atomic bomb, and it wasn't even the bell. The greatest weapon was the highly sophisticated apparatus of state secrecy itself.
A bureaucracy so perfectly designed that it has successfully concealed a fundamental revolution in physics for over 7 decades.
It is just a staggering thought to process. The idea that the physics textbook we accept as absolute truth hasn't just been naturally outpaced by science, it has been actively, deliberately edited to keep us looking down at the dirt instead of up at the stars.
Understanding this history really requires a willingness to look closely at the shadows and ask what massive structure is casting them.
Well said. We really want to thank you for joining us on this incredibly deep journey through the source material today, pulling apart the layers of history, applied physics, and institutional secrecy.
It's been a fascinating deep dive.
It really has. So as we sign off, we want to leave you with a final lingering thought to explore on your own. If this bifurcated physics is real, and a century's worth of revolutionary zero-point energy and torsion propulsion technology is locked away behind that impenetrable black budget wall, what happens when the containment finally breaches?
Because it always does eventually.
Right. History shows us that no secret, no matter how heavily guarded, can be kept forever. If zero-point energy is truly infinite, can an apparatus built entirely on secrecy and structural control survive in a world where power is limitless and absolutely free? Keep questioning the narrative.